Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons.
Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video.
Hey there, Rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week. Working on our new editing stuff. We got it ready to go. We have a Rezzard Giants list that I am piloting versus Paul, who is playing an RR kind of Turbo Stranger combo deck that I was sent by my friend Will Lugar. Very cool list. It is a red, black, blue list using a lot of, you're trying to just kind of get those strangers out very, very early, kind of overwhelm your opponent that way. And the Rezard list is not using a single copy of Alter or Sigurd. It is just using one of my favorite spells, Alice's Castling, alongside with Dance of Shadows and the Giants to do some really, really fancy instant speed reanimation tricks. And I think you guys are really going to like it. So we're going to have Rezard on the draw here, which is great in any, Regalia match. Paul deciding to use Refrain to start off with for Stone Dark Depths, getting out that Refrain summoning. So this is going to get him a token. We got to go grab one real quick. So essentially what this is going to do is he gets to put out a 4/8 beast token. Paul having a little bit of fun over here while I rush over to get the token for him. A 4/8 beast token that on enter gets him to draw 3 and put 2 cards back from his deck on the top of his deck in any order, and then inverts his ruler. So we got that turtle token out here. Now we get to go triggering off and drawing some extra cards. So obviously in this deck, card selection is very, very key. You want to be able to see those combos and pieces to be able to set up to cast the cloning spell multiple times in one turn on the same chase as the free stranger spell. So you're just trying to set up that combo that way and find those pieces as effectively as possible, as early as possible too, so that you can hit the strangers. Choosing to pass turn there. Have a black stone. We're gonna go ahead and energize and use Death Scythe. The modes here, because he's got a body on board, we're gonna make each person sacrifice a resonator. So gets that 4/8 off the board, and then we hit 2 strangers off the top. First one being Black Wizard is very, very helpful because that means we're immediately in a place to have ramp. Second stranger here. I don't think we... Oh, it was a Shade, I believe. Oh, no, the Loki was the second one sent. So now we have a nice little setup there to be able to reanimate Loki at instant speed to clear the board if we need to, which is very, very nice when we're playing against a deck that is going to be spamming out creatures. Paul's turn 2 here. We have the Percival. He gets to see that Spiral, which is very, very helpful. Spiral of Potential and Convergence. Passes the turn there. At the end of the turn, we're going to go ahead and cast Moan of the Dead to target the Percy. This is mainly because we want to get more strangers to the grave. So he chooses to banish and foresee 1, but we're going ahead and get that stranger to grave, hit the second Black Wizard. So now we're going into our next turn with a total of 6 will available to us, which is an excellent position for this Rezard deck to be in. Spending 1 of the floating black and then green off the stone to be able to play Pharesia. Another excellent tool for this deck, primarily because we want to get stuff into the graveyard. We want to be discarding things, and Pharesia lets us get giants out of our hand very quickly, as well as things that we want to reanimate as long as they're darkness or wind into the grave very quickly. And then we're playing a Shion here, which is just more ramp, as well as just making our mage arts a little bit more effective. So essentially paid a blue stone to produce a black blue. Adarakti's Stone coming down for Paul. Down comes the Percy once again. Still just haven't found those pieces to the combo yet. Space-time anomaly comes down. So we just want to make sure that everything here audio-wise is recording. Okay, so it is picking it up. Good. Before recovery, we're going to go ahead and use one of the Black Wizard's effects to produce black and flash in Mikage Rhea. This is going to help us get one of those cards that we need to the graveyard, particularly probably our first reanimation target. So we can usually get this. It's only a darkness card, right? So it can get, for the most part, giant wise, it can get us an Oot card, Loki. See me eyeing the Oot card there. It also can send a part of True Power, which is great because it's just, you know, essentially turns the Rhea into a free reanimate spell, because we can use the Rhea to then cast the part and then bring Rhea back to our hand. So we can do a lot of stuff here. Still, before recovery, we're going to use Shion and the Death Scythe to be able to do Space-Time Anomaly, draw us an extra card, and get us another card into the graveyard. This is just, we want as many cards in graveyard as possible, especially if we're using things like Moan of the Dead, to just be as effective as possible. And also just clearing the board for whatever we have going in. Moving into combat, we're going to go ahead and swing in for 6 with Pharisia. He says no blocks. She'll gain Drain because of Rhea, so we go to 34 and 46. We see we do have that Scheherazade in the hand for Paul, which is a good setup for like after the combo's gone off. Space-Time Anomaly to kill the Rhea gets him another card in hand. That's his first card for the turn. See the second card for the turn being Change the Heart. Produce red, I think. I don't know what he did for the second mode. Maybe burned me for 6. Maybe we just missed it. Third card being these free stranger spell, and then the clone spell comes down for free because it is the 4th card for the turn. So 2 strangers coming down here from Paul's side. First one being a tree man. Guardian of the Earth gets him a stone. Second one being a Chronos, so it gets to lock me out a little bit. I'll try to think of what exactly he wants to use for the Chronos here in response to his enter effect, or if I want to do something in response to his enter to try to kill him potentially based on what's in my hand. I believe he calls Chance, which I say is fine. Calls a stone. So Paul's in a really weird spot here. He's locked me out of Chance, right? But he knows that I have access to... Oh, we might... Yeah, he's locked me out of Chance, but we know that I have access to Pharisia to be able to discard stuff. We also know that next turn I'm going to be going into a grand total of 9 will. But 9 will's only for Mage Arts, right? So 6 will total, which is not enough to cast a Giant, which is pretty unfortunate. Like, hard casting a Giant in this situation would probably be pretty good. But we don't necessarily mind too much. We're going to go ahead and use, to get something out there, we're going to go ahead and say, well, we'll use the 2 black wizards, produce double black, and then we'll pay a green and we'll judgment. Or I'll get a giant out that way, sending 4 cards to the grave, including a part of True Power, which is really, really good to see there. Choosing to bring out... now I could choose to bring out any Resonator in the graveyard. It doesn't really matter. It's about kind of setting up for future turns. You see I do have a Belgamir in there. Belgamir kind of seems like the best choice because we can lock down the Tree Man and set up for future reanimations as well as drawing a card, especially since we already have an Utgard Loki in hand. We able to use Alice's Castling, or even just set up for next turn Dance of Shadows into Analysis Castling. Really lots of things we could do there. You see I do have that Athenia in hand there. That can also be an excellent grab. Trying to figure out exactly what to keep, how to stack the cards, what to keep in my hand. Of the 4 cards, you see there's an Utgard Loki, a Pharesia, a Athenia, and a Shion. So I get to put them on in my hand, or sorry, top of the deck, in any order, or send any number of them to the grave, and then I draw 1. The other thing is too is Belgamir is now a Vampire Darkness Giant, in addition to his other races. Or in addition to being a Water Giant, he's now a Darkness Vampire because of Rezzard's reanimation effect. This puts it in a really good spot for being able to use his God Art or anything else. Just a lot of potential power damage there. And if I can find a Rhea, Rezzard's God Art becomes even better because then suddenly I'm starting to gain life off of the damage there too. Swing in for another 6. We don't have the Rhea here, so we're just going to deal 6, and then we'll pass the turn. And before Paul draws, at his turn, he has to pick what he wants to use Kronos for. So we can't pick Chance again, so his only choices are to either pick Resonators, Additions, or Regalia. Regalia doesn't super matter right now because I already have one on field. Chance he can't do again. Additions probably doesn't mean anything, so the usual only call in this situation is probably to do Resonators. Unfortunately, that's kind of not what you want to be doing against a Reanimate deck, because I'm going to be bringing in stuff anyway off of spells, off of Chance. So a little bit tricky situation for that Kronos right now. We are going to catch that the Tree Man doesn't recover here, don't worry, before he moves to attack with it. It is a 20/20. It is a very large, but it is tapped and will not be able to swing at anything. Down comes Scheherazade with resting the Regalia as part of the Awakening, so he'll get all 5 counters on it. This deck definitely, because of its color combination, has ways to cast pretty much every single one of its strangers, except for the Tree Man, so it's good that he hit that off the combo card. Kind of checking what he might want to do here. With trying to deal with the Belgamir, we're going to pay 1 to cast another Refrains Summoning. So, oh no, it would have cost him 2 at this point. Oh no, he has both because of the Scheherazade. So he has both Passion and Columnist because of the Scheherazade. So he can put in the token, gets him to draw 3 cards and put 2 back. So, we know we have the Loki in graveyard at this point. It's probably not going to come up as being a reanimation target anytime soon. Especially, it's probably more of a if I fall behind kind of move. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and use Space-Time Anomaly here to try to answer the token a little bit and draw another card. Cast the Space-Time Anomaly again. Oh, sorry. We used the Chronos. We used the Space-Time Anomaly on Chronos, and then Shion triggered to reduce the attack of the token. And then we did it again, killed Chronos, and reduced the attack of the token again. And now we're recovered. Because we can cast Chance, we just can't cast Resonators. Swing in for 11 with Burgomir. Seeing if we can get that damage through. We have the Between Passion and Calmness, which is a 5-drop spell, but it only costs him 1 because he has Passion and Calmness, and he can try to put the Belgamir back at the bottom of my deck. So it does have an answer to the Giant here. In response, though, we're going to use Burgomir, who is a Darkness Resonator. We're going to sacrifice him to Moan of the Dead to be able to kill his Tree Man, because we definitely have more than 3 cards in our graveyard, and send another Stranger to the graveyard as well. This is one of the nice things about this deck with Moan of the Dead is, like, because Rezzard gives it darkness as well, you can kind of start grabbing things that aren't darkness to kind of swap things up and, hit things with your opponent. You're going to see that is a that's a major. I only have a couple copies of Chronos, and so our deck is playing one, so we use representatives for the Rezard deck for the second copies, and the major, because it controls what your opponent does, is our little proxy for the deck of hitting another Chronos. So, swinging in once again with Pharesia, taking him down to 22. After calling Stone with Rezard. We're going to produce black and black green, I think double green here, using the Shio to sacrifice for part of True Power to reanimate my Chronos that I just sent to grave. And Chronos trigger, and I think we're going to call Chance on Paul's side, because I know that the deck is very spell-based, and we want to stop him from casting those as much as possible. So we admit that that's probably a suboptimal tapping of the Scythe, because to get the 1 green, we're not going to make use of the other green. But having the 1 black green, it's might have been better to use the green stone, but in case we have something we want to cast that isn't a mage art that uses the green, it might be a little bit better to keep the green stone up instead. Dark Depth Stone. Down comes the dragon, 2-drop 10/10, thanks to having passion. It's got flying and swiftness. He's still got to deal with a full grip of cards, though, when I have Pharesia. I think he passes the turn there, which is a very interesting choice. During the end phase, we're going to go ahead and try to bring back another Burgomir. Use Burgomir's effect here. I don't know who we tapped down. I think we tapped down the dragon. Maybe we just forgot to tap down something. It's a little bit Incorrect play line on our part. I would have tapped something down. Probably the Scheherazade, to be perfectly honest, so that I could try to swing in and kill it. But ultimately, we're just going to go ahead and call Resonators, I think. And then with Kronos at the beginning of my turn, and then swing in with Brogomir, gets blocked by the token. Swing in with Thracia for 6. Says that's fine, goes down to 16. Tries to swing in with Kronos. Kind of done his job at this point, so if he dies, he dies. Because additions and regalia really aren't going to do much. Blocks with the dragon. In response, we're going to go ahead and use Alice's Castling on the Brogomir. That's going to resolve. We get to send Brogomir to the bottom of the deck. And out from hand comes an Utgard Loki, who gets to pop the dragon to get him out of the way of Kronos. We're going to see, in response to that, we're going to see a space-time anomaly on the Kronos, which we'll let resolve. And then trying to double pump up the dragon and shoot Kronos 2 times for 400 damage. Which we're thinking about whether or not we want those to resolve or not. And we say, nope, that's fine. Cost him a lot of resources. We end up with a trade. He has to discard a card, and I lose 400 life. So we'll go down to 42. Choosing whether or not, look, I think I have an Athenia in hand there, so instead we're just going to go ahead and go to combat, swing in for 10, take him down to 6, which just puts him in range with Pharesia. You see, I do have that Athenia in hand there. I think the thought was to like cast and then bring it back, kind of free recovery of 3 stones, but ultimately choosing to leave the stones up, especially knowing since Paul's deck does run Erendite, it's a little bit safer for me to just wait rather than try to commit to it. And there's really no risk of me just kind of sitting. But what we are going to do, just to be safe, is we're going to Dance of Shadows back the Kronos from hand using the double black from the Space with Time Wizards. And this Kronos can call Chance, so we can try to lock Paul out of being able to cast Resonators or Chance during his turn and kind of push through for a time lock for victory for this match, or for this deck. You see a little bit of editing there. We kind of forgot that the Kronos would die because I cast it during my main phase before it ever moved into his turn. So we're kind of doing a little bit of a time cut there where we got things back to where they needed to be. But the Kronos is dead because I cast it during my main phase and not my end phase. And then here in his main phase, we're trying to see what strangers we're going to hit. Talking about which strangers he wants to try to cast. The Ushua is the first one he reveals off of Scheherazade, but it can't technically hit the Utgard because it is cost 4, not 5. So he's choosing not to cast that. Burning another counter here to see what other strangers he can hit in the main phase. And this is kind of the inherent weirdness of Scheherazade, is sometimes you just don't see good strangers because it is random. Does see a King of the Seas here, so it's a flying 10/10, so we're going to go ahead and cast that for 3, get to draw some extra cards. Maybe I didn't call Resonators, maybe I called Regalia. I think I might have called Regalia, actually. So that's it for Paul. Just going to go ahead and pass the turn there. We're going to try to move into combat. Swing in for that last 6 damage in the air with Pharesia. He can block with the Triton, but we know we have stuff in hand to be able to deal with it. At that point in time, we'll just pay 1, cast Moan of the Dead. trying to kill the king of the seas there, or the dragon of the seas, or whatever it is, to clear the way for Pharisia to pump through for that last 600 damage. Paul seeing if maybe there's a stranger that could save him. Just gonna give it a shot. Arthur's not gonna do much for him. Burn another counter here. Regulus also not going to do much for him here. Choosing not to cast it, and says, let's go all in. Let's use that last counter on the Scheherazade and see what we hit. We see a Morrigan, who he can cast and use to discard one of my cards, but unfortunately he's already declared blocks. So there's not much that's going to happen there, even if he summons it. And in response, we're just going to go ahead and discard every single card to Pharisia anyway, and push through for lethal. And we go to game 2. So here in game 2, we're already kind of starting a little bit into the match. I apologize for that. We had a little bit of an error in that first few turns of recording that we just wanted to jump past. So we're here. We're in turn 2. Paul is on the choose took the play, and we did see the same kind of play saw before. First turn, 1 drop, then Scythe for me on 2 drop. We actually hit both Black Wizards off the top, so sitting on a lot of will on my side. I did get burned for 6 by the Regalia, the Change the Heart here from Paul. Just going to produce 1 and invert. First card for turn is our Change the Heart. We're going to use I think he uses the mode to produce a blue and draw a card. So it's his first card for turn, and he's got a blue floating. Produces 2 for Mage Arts and uses the floating. He's got a second card there, and then third card, and then fourth card for free. So this is kind of the fastest the combo can kind of go off. He gets to put 3 strangers into play, and still leaves 1 will open, which is very, very nice. First one is Morrigan. Gets to rip my hand open a little bit. Now we have to resolve the Morrigan's effect before we can summon the next stranger, just because of how enter effects work. Looking at the hand here, a lot of removal, a lot of giants. So nothing super great for him to make, but it does remove it from the game, so hitting the part of true power makes the most sense. Second stranger here gets him a Faust. Third one gets him a Regulus. So a very, very aggressive 3 strangers here, starting to put in a lot of pressure very, very early. And the Faust is very nice for being able to recur. So as I'm starting to remove his threats, he can use the Faust to kind of keep pressuring me back, which is what he wants to be doing. But he does get to hit me with the Regulus for 10, which puts me down to 24, which would be pretty low life total for a Reanimator deck to be at on just their 3rd turn. Flashing in the Rhea during the recovery phase, but he does have the Erendite to be able to stop me from doing the setup there. Move into recovery. We're going to go ahead and say, well, then let's do this again. I need to send cards to the graveyard. You're stopping me from doing it. Let's do an early Rezard flip. So you can use the 2 black wizards, produce double black, and then the 1 green from the stones. So get 4 cards into our graveyard and then hopefully hit something effective to bring into play. We do see the Pharesia. Not the biggest thing I could have hit, but it is very helpful because of the fact that now it lets me get my giants out of my hands a lot faster. We do know I have the 2 Utgard Lokis, which are excellent targets for Pharesia to be able to discard and then reanimate later. It also turns my Moan of the Deads more online because of the fact that we now have a lot more cards in the graveyard to be able to count towards Moan of the Dead's kind of number requirement. And this is kind of the downside of Strangers, is because they're typically lower costed, so Moan of the Dead is a very good removal spell to deal with them. I don't have to have terribly too many cards in the graveyard to be able to start popping Strangers off the board. Swings in with Faust for 14 with its Bane and Drain. In response, we're going to go ahead and do Rezzard's Godarts. Paul says he's got no responses, so now we're going to start picking stuff. So Rezzard's going to hit Faust, Pharesia is going to hit Regulus, and then Ray is going to hit the Morrigan. So this is going to, with the Drain, it's going to be technically 2,800 gain, but because Regulus will then hurt me for 10, because he's taken that 10 damage, it's technically only 18 gain, and the Morrigan does get to stick around. So we gain 18 here, we don't kill the Morrigan quite the whole way, and we go back up to, it's 14 plus 8, so 22, so back up to 46. So back to a more respectable life total. And also knowing that Pharesia is now able to answer the Morrigan. We know we've got cards in hand to be able to kill the Morrigan. Puts her in a really weird spot. Probably not worth swinging with her at this point. Because the Pharesia will just, kill her just by discarding a single card. Or I could block and kill or do any kind of number of things. Going to go ahead and cast the Scheherazade, getting her out now that the Godzard is over, to be able to start potentially drawing those other Strangers out of the Stranger deck and getting them into play. Going to use Pharesia's effect to discard Utgard Loki to try to kill the Morrigan. In response, we're going to put a promise counter on her with the Faust. This is what I'm talking about. So it's kind of his way to kind of keep up. Now, I could discard another card here in response to trying to put the promise counter on to kill it, but I'd rather just kill the Faust. So the Faust is just going to come out. I have I have enough options to be able to kill the Faust more permanently, or prevent the Faust from swinging in general. So I'd rather save the cards until I need them. And then before recovery on my turn, we're going to use Pharesia's effect to pitch a Trow to the graveyard to pump up Pharesia to be a 10-10. So 10-10 flying in the air with that Drain gets him down to 3,000 and myself up to 46 or 56. And with that, we pass the turn. So Ball does have an opportunity to swing with Faust for some pretty big damage here. The question becomes whether or not to swing at something or at face. Also notice I have a pretty full grip of cards. Just chooses to pass the turn. So in the end phase of his turn, we're going to go ahead and use from the graveyard the Dance of Shadows that we have in there. I start grabbing the Alice in Sky Sling. The Dance of Shadows here to reanimate the Trow. And then getting a stone into play, and then getting to go grab a 1-drop, primarily Rhea. So this is one of the things that this deck likes to do. It does this neat little loop of being able to use Trow to get stones, to get Rhea, to cast Rhea, to send another reanimation spell to the grave, to kind of just like keep this cycle going. And Trow just by himself is just such a heavy hitter of a resonator that we can do a lot of work with it. This is still pre-recovery. We're gonna go ahead and see him try to put the Trow back on the bottom of the deck. And we say, unfortunately with this, that's fine. There's nothing we can do. We don't have a castling in hand at the moment. That would be the prime example of when we could use castling. But now still pre-recovery, we can go ahead and cast the Rhea that we just grabbed to try to send something to grave if we want to. Probably another Dance of Shadows, knowing that we have an Utgard Loki in grave. There's no real point in grabbing another heavy hitter reanimate card. And Dance of Shadows being able to set up these little funky instant speed giant reanimations is very, very helpful. Moving to recovery. One of the two Reyes can attack. We've spent God Art. We're sitting at 5,600 life. Putting a lot of pressure on Paul here. Swing in for 4, take him down to 26, go back up to 6 grand. Swing in the air for 6, take him down to 18, go back up to 66. Sorry, no, take him down to 20 even, and then go back up to 66. Use Pharisia's effects to pitch an Utgard Loki to try to hit the Scheherazade for -4. Or I think the Faust for 10, I think actually is what we do preemptively. Swing in for 10 with Rezard. Going to try to use the Scheherazade here, see if he can get something into play. Before moving to blocks. Gets a Chronos. Deciding whether or not that's the one he wants to be casting here. Does decide to cast the Chronos, putting that into play. And then we're going to respond before Chronos does his effect. So while we still have access to everything possible here, we're going to cast some stuff. Wait, do we still haven't declared blocks yet? So there's a lot of manipulation that can be going on here. We're going to go ahead and use Moan of the Dead, banishing the Rhea. She doesn't get to come back to hand because it's alternative cost instead of additional cost. So we're going to try to kill the Faust. Gonna send a stranger to a grave. Oh, I guess we forgot to send a stranger to grave here off the Moan of the Dead. Going to try to Dance of Shadows. Still the Utgard Loki here. We can use the 2 black wizards to produce the black for it because we're on our turn to kill the Scheherazade. I'll lose 400 life. Go down to 62. And then the Chronos effects gets to resolve, and we're trying to push in for the 1000 here. He's going to try to block with Chronos. We're going to use Pharisia's effect in response to shoot the Chronos for 600, or for -4/-4, so that we don't die. We've got a counter on the Chronos. I gain 1,000 life, and I'll go up to 72. Because we've dealt 1,000 damage. And then at the end of the turn, the Utgard Loki gets RFG'd because the Dance of Shadows brought it back during my turn. So, as you can see there, we did a lot of work, a lot of really intricacies there, but it was mainly just to make sure that I could push damage through, or at the very least make sure Rezard didn't die with whatever he was going to try to block against. And I do have the Moan of the Dead in hand, which is very helpful for this exact situation where he now has the Faust available. Although I think he might have cast Chosen Chance to prevent me from being able to cast them now with the Chronos' effect. So all of that spell casting happened before he chose off of the Chronos. Floating, casting another Change the World here, or Change the Heart, sorry. Gets to draw him a card and rest an entity or produce blue. Does choose to rest the Rhea. Gives him an opportunity to potentially swing the Faust into Rezard. Does decide to go face instead, I believe. Oh, he's going to go with the Pharisia. So that's fine. He gains 14, goes back up to 34. Another refrains summoning, gets to get him another token. Use the floating and the stone there for space-time anomaly to hit the Rhea, leaving the board with just Rezard. Having to stare down on what we got. Pass turn. Before recovery, we have it to top deck it, which is really nice. We're going to go ahead and discard the trowel to get another stone, which is really nice because now we don't have to keep. We can keep using Rezard to push the attack rather than having to use him to call stone. And we get another Rhea here, which we can quick cast in. Thanks for that other stone, and continue the cycle going. Cast the Rhea. Send another darkness card to grave. Ultimately, probably choosing Pathway Part or another Dance of Shadows. I don't know if I have any left Dance of Shadows in the deck at this point, though. You have a space-time anomaly, so helpful for being able to, again, refill my hand here. use double black, I think, or black green. Produce black green here to use the Rhea to reanimate a target. Going to reanimate the Trow. Oh, I can't. It has to be a Darkness Resonator. So we're going to reanimate the Utgard Loki here, which we will use to kill the token, I believe. Get it out of the way so that Rezard can swing in, force Paul to discard a card, and I have to lose 4 life. Discards the Fire Dragon. Now we can just recast the Rhea. Brought back to my hand. Another part of True Power. Oh, ultimately choosing to send another Space Time again. I think the purpose of this is primarily to load up the hand, especially because we want to be able to cast another Pharesia. You see we do have the Pharesia in hand there, so the more we can work on it, the better. Swinging in for 10 with Rezard. He says, that's fine, I'll take the damage. For recovery, we're going to try to potentially invert. Does decide not to, because you can use Change the Heart to invert that at instant speed by producing one color, one for anything. Once again, trying to decide where he wants to send the Faust, whether it be at face or not. Swings it at me. We're going to block with the Utgard. And then use the Space Time on the Faust so that it at least becomes a trade. I say that's fine. He does get to gain the 10 life at that point, though. Chooses to invert here by producing red. Down comes that Fire Dragon. Swings in for 10. In response to no blocks, we're going to go ahead and use the effect to give himself additional attack and try to shoot the Rhea. In response to that, we're going to sacrifice the Rhea to Moan of the Dead to kill the dragon. This time we don't forget to send a stranger to the graveyard with that Moan of the Dead. So you have the Erendite here, which again is one of our little reference pieces. This one is for the Chrono, or no, not the Chronos. The trying to remember what my references are here. The Shade, because it has multiple triggers, and Erendite stops triggers, so that's the connection point there. Down comes another Refrain Summoning, putting out another token, so we're just continuing this cycle here. But unfortunately, this means that because he has 0 cards in hand, he gets to keep one of the 3. It doesn't really do him much good beyond that. And the Faust can't even swing this turn because it was killed on his turn. Or the dragon was killed on his turn. So we're going to use one of the black and the double green here once again to use another Trow, getting another stone, continuing the ramp while being able to continue the pressure up with Rezard. Get another Rhea into hand, use the other black from the other black wizard to cast it. Send a Death Scythe to grave. And the reason why we're sending the Death Scythe here is because we know there's only 1 card left in his hand, and we're trying to set up a position where we can just use Pharesia to push through for lethal. Finally bringing down the Pharesia. Move into combat with Rezard. Swinging in for 10. Blocks with the Faust. Trying to count how many cards we have in graveyard to really make use of for recurring the Scythe multiple times for Pharesia. Another space-time anomaly coming down here. And then I think a second space-time, drawing a card, seeing if we're going to use the second one there. We're going to use Moan of the Dead, sacrificing the Rhea again to kill the Faust. Seeing if there's a response to the moan here. Says no, that's fine. Send a stranger of random to the grave. Hit the Chronos on my side there for this game. And then 10 damage coming in. But before we go into before we go into damage, we're gonna flash in the Rhea from hand so that we can get the drain, send a part of true power to grave. Get the life gain before the damage here. And once that takes, we're gonna go ahead and use part of true power. Sacrifice the Rhea, bring out the Chronos. And lock him out of chance for the turn. Although we might have actually chosen Resonators here. I'm not entirely sure. I think the obvious choice is probably to cast Chance. But also, knowing that he has only so few cards in hand, the right choice might have actually been Resonators. Counting how many times I can bring Scythe back for Pharesia. Choosing to pass the turn, we're going to pick Resonators, I think, with Chronos here before we draw. Move to recover because we did see a pass from Paul. Swing in with Pharesia. Pay 1. Send in the Rhea. And this is all before damage. The idea being that we want to send as many cards to graveyard as possible to be able to bring Scythe back to our hands as many times as possible to pump up Pharesia, while still leaving it up to having enough damage, having enough will and cards in grave to serve its removal to make sure that Rezard can push through for lethal. Rezard and Chronos together can push through for lethal. So we're going to produce double black and then finally get rid of the 2 black wizards. Bring the Death Scythe back to hand from the grave. Pitch it to do +4/+4 and -4/-4 to the token. So this is a little bit wrong in sequencing, although we want to put all the pumps on the person that has barrier. I'm going to do it a second time, so now Phlash is swinging in for 14. $18. Pitching it as just a green card this time. And then 22. Trying to decide whether I want to get rid of my last reanimation to push it up, but no, we're just going to swing in for the 22 here, and we'll gain 22 life. Kronos attempts to swing in. This will be for lethal. He has the spell to put my Kronos back on the bottom of the deck now that he's just relegated to Resonators now and not Chance. Don't know why I removed him from the game. It should put him at the bottom of the deck. Swinging in with Rezard to try to do lethal. Stops it with a space-time anomaly. Leaves him sitting at a very, very low total here. It's going to go ahead and bring a couple Resonators back to his hand. Chooses, I believe, the Morrigan and the Regulus. Because looking at the other Resonators, they're not really going to do much. Oh, he does grab the Dragon. I think the Morrigan, the thought was, I'm going to discard cards anyway, so he'd rather put the Dragon out because it can at least spot removal things, which makes sense. It's also more will efficient. Down comes the Regulus. Regulus is going to swing in for 10 at Phlash. I'm going to block net 0 essentially because I'll gain 4, but Regulus takes 4, so I'll take 4. Down comes the Dragon. The Dragon can try to swing in at Phlash. We're going to Moan of the Dead the Dragon. Before that happens, we'll go ahead and put a counter on it with Faust, so that when it dies, he at least gets Faust back. That one is the last of the 3 proxies, and it is for my Faust. So the Dragon will die. Out will come his Faust. And at that point in time, I think the 2 cards in his hand are 2 mill cells. So there's really nothing much he can do at this point. Second and third mill cell, no cards in hand. We know we have a Dance of Shadows and a Utgard Loki in hand. We also don't have any flyers. So we can just swing in for lethal with Phlash, and that is going to be the game. there you go. That is the match. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Ton of fun playing this game out. These are really fun deck lists to be able to play. I absolutely love Alice's Castling as a card, but we'll deck the deck profiles later this week. And until next time, DMO73 saying class dismissed.